All right, so today I'm working on a 1995 Toyota Camry. I am taking the gas tank out. You'll need the extra room. Need a lot of room. So I have these up on ramps, and I have jack stands under the front to give it that extra lift. That's all I could get because my jack stand sucks, or my jack sucks. But this was enough room for me to work from the back. I've already got the gas tank out, but I'm going to show you all the connection points. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is how we got to the top to take off these. When you take off this fitting here, always use a flare wrench to take these off. You see how that's all rounded off and stuff? That's because somebody wasn't using a flare wrench when they took this off once. It's very necessary for this particular type of fitting. Everything else pretty much came off easy though. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 different tubes that go into here, and then there's a couple of points where those also touch the gas tank. This is a heat shield that sits above the exhaust pipe. The exhaust pipe runs right underneath the middle here, and this is a heat shield that sits on top of it. Mine's all bent up, and so is the exhaust pipe. So the first thing that you'll take out is the exhaust pipe. Alright, so this is the very back of the pipe, and this is the orientation that it sits in the car. It's a little bit twisted, but this is the orientation. This is the fitting that attaches to the catalytic converter, and these bolts were extremely rusted on. I had to do a lot of hammering and getting smaller size fittings on there. The bolts are destroyed, so I have to buy new ones. You could take it off right there and just drop that pipe, and that'd be fine. But I took off the entire thing. So this was the last hanger that I took it out of, and you can see that it's like a double hanger. There's one that's poking this way and the other one that's poking that way. And then there's a hanger back here. I just unbolted that from the top. Another hanger here, and bolted that one from the top. That was the easiest for me to do. And then there's a hanger that attaches around this one that you can also unbolt, but I just decided to go ahead and pull it out. I had help to pull on the back while I was using a flathead to pry. So you take off that exhaust pipe, and then you take off this heat shield, just a couple of bolts on there. I like to use soft, squishy material when I'm going under a car, because it's just miserable down here. It's always miserable going under the car. That's where the gas tank was. Okay. Big cavity. And you can see that there's a little port over there. Well, that port is accessible from underneath the seat. From underneath the back seat. So you see the back seat here. You just pop it up. It's real easy. Just try and it'll come right up. It's got this little thing on top of it. You take off 3 screws. And then underneath there, you have the, this is how you get to the fuel pump in this car, which is really great, actually. Very good design. But from here, you can get to 1, 2 connections, and then there's a third one over here that you can't quite get to until you start to drop the gas tank. And then you can also get to a couple of little fittings right down here once you start to drop the gas tank. There's a couple of fittings right up here that you need to mess around with. The first thing to do is get these guys off of here. Now those can be very tough, but always grab hold of the hose. Once it's loose, grab hold of it and twist it. If you can't grab it with your hand, try a tool, but try not to pierce that hose, because that'll be annoying to replace later on. That breaks the seal, and then you can slip it off easier. This one was pretty easy for me. It was a little bit challenging, but it was pretty easy because you can get your arms up and around those guys. This one was extremely difficult to get off for me. And I wound up prying it and pulling on it and all kinds of stuff, and it worked out in the end. There's those 2 hoses that connect to the port, and then that's the third one there. And what I did is I dropped the gas tank down, and when it was laying down a bit, I went up top and I reached in and I grabbed hold of this fitting here, which was on the end, and I pulled it up, and then I twisted this until it popped, and then I pulled it up off of that, that metal spike over there on the gas tank, which I'll show you again in a minute here. So this is the spike, okay? These are the two that are accessible from the top. You know, this is the viewing window. You reach under there, and this is the place where you grab the fitting and move it up, and then you twist the thing and pull it off. These are the two hoses in the back, the really annoying tough one and the easy one. And I stuffed paper towels in here because I don't want anything getting into this gas tank while I'm working on it. This gas tank has a hole in the bottom, so I've got to either seal it or get another gas tank. Okay, so we're going in from the side that I was working on now. I came in through the back, and as you can see, it's pretty tight down here. You want as much room as you can get, but you can see these hoses here. I went ahead and got a screwdriver that managed to get these guys loose. And I think I used a wrench on a couple of them or something. I didn't need to take this one off, but this was being such a jerk that I tried to get the other side off of both of these hoses. But yeah, this side came off easier in the end. And the way that I got to it was, you can see I'm reaching my hand over. See that? So you just reach your hand over and you've got some pressure to pull with it. Figure out the angle that works for you. Okay, so there's a bolt here that sits on top of the gas tank. You got to take that off once it comes down a little bit. This once again is the part that goes on that little spike in the middle of the gas tank. This is the other end of the flare wrench fitting. So use a flare wrench on both sides. Well, this side not as important, but on this car, but you should use a flare wrench on both sides. And that one I believe was a 14, and I had to get a special one for that. And this one looks to be like an 18 or a 19. And this here, that hose connects to a metal piece that's welded onto the unit. So I'll go show you that in a minute here, but first I want to mention that these are the gas tank hangers. Okay. And this one goes right there. Very easy to get to. Take the hanger down and out. Pretty flexible. And then you go to the other side, which is right here. And I made sure I was out from underneath it. I got a block of wood to rest it on so that it didn't just go like straight to the ground. I got this block of wood to rest it on, and I had most of the gas out of it already, so it wasn't that heavy, but you might get like a jack in here. So those two came down, and then you finagle it a little bit. You know, you wiggle it left, you wiggle it right. There's all these hoses and stuff. You don't want to cut these hoses with the side of the gas tank because that can be sharp. Take it easy, and then you just slide it on out. So once it was down, I guess halfway on the wooden block, that's when I got to this part. And then when it was down the rest of the way, you know, touching the ground on the one end, so it was at like a 45 angle here, I pulled this guy out of a clip, which I'll go show you in a second here. And I pulled this hose right here off of a metal part. You can see here that there's a bolt I could have taken off instead. And then this whole unit would have just come right off. I didn't see this bolt at the time, so you can probably just take this bolt off. It looks like it's about a 10 or a 12 millimeter. But this is where the hose was, and this is the clip for that other hose that was coming up that attaches to this guy here. Yeah, and this is where that bolt goes on the top. That's the first one I saw when it started to slide down a little bit. It's this hose that runs through this little thing, and then it's connected to a little clip here too. And I just found it easier to take off this bolt than the other bolt. So that catalytic converter over there gets a lot of heat, and these bolts have to take a beating, so they got a lot of rust on them. You can see how chewed up and destroyed they are. It's because of what I had to do to get them off. So in this case, I didn't have it high enough up off the ground to use the breaker bar better, and it doesn't have enough space for me to use my my torque gun, so I couldn't get it off with the torque gun, and didn't want to break any bits with like the angles and all that. You know, I didn't want to break anything, so I ended up using, I tried these, but I didn't have the right size. These are something that I bought at O'Reilly's. They grip they go in the opposite direction here with their teeth, and they grip onto bolts. They'll ruin the bolts and the nuts, so don't use them if you don't want to ruin them, but they will grip into it and, you know, keep torquing. Sometimes the bits shear off though, so that's not good if it's particularly stuck on. So I sprayed these with WD-40 a lot, you know, every 10 minutes for like an hour, and then the next day I came out and I sprayed them again. But what I ended up doing was, these are 14 normally, 14 millimeter, but once the 14 rounded off fully, I got out my 13 deep wall, or not deep wall, excuse me, it's not a deep wall, it's a deep socket, but deep wall would be better. But I got a 13 here, and I hammered it on, and once it was on there fully, I used a breaker bar, nice and slow, and had just enough room to get it to click over once. Then I switched to, because I didn't have enough room to use the breaker bar fully, otherwise I would have kept using it. So then I switched to this guy, and I just used my foot. I laid on my back, and I had this in position, and I pushed it with my foot, and then I pulled it back and pushed it with my foot again. And that worked really well for one of them, and the other one I had a heck of a lot of trouble with, so, but they both came off in the end. You gotta get like a wrench up in there to hold on to the one end while you're using this on the other side, you know. Whenever you're working with gasoline, make sure that you wear the right gloves. These are nitrile or nitrolite or something, and they protect against gasoline. Gasoline will damage your organs, so it's not good to get it on your skin. It's not good for you to breathe it for long either. Anyways, this gas tank was not even half full. It was, you know, just a few drops in each of these wells, but it added up to being probably about a quarter gallon, and that's quite a lot to take out with paper towels. So what I did is I had a partner and my dad, and he set up where he had this can off, the top off, and he had a funnel set up to catch the gasoline. He got a little a siphon, has a little pump siphon, and just one end goes at the high point in the gas tank, the other end goes the low point, which is the gas can, and then you squeeze the ball. It has a direction that it goes. Pretty nice little device. So I tipped this down and put all the gas down in this corner here, and we opened this guy up in order to see down in there. We could have put it through any orifice that it would fit, like this guy, but I wanted to be able to see what we were doing, so I just took this off. Anyways, we got all the gasoline out that way, and now I'm going to turn it over and see what the damage on the bottom looks like. Okay, and you can see that none of my delicate instruments are resting on the table. Certainly did not want to mess any of that stuff up. You can see a big grease pattern here from where the gasoline has been dripping down, but obviously it's coming from all this zone. And this is some goo that I put on while I was under the car. Probably gonna have to take all that off and try again, or do something to the inside. But you can see here, this is not normal, this section here that's flexed. She got hit in the back of the car by a driver who was running a red light, and it crumpled up the back corner of the car. So her gas tank got pressure from the backside, which pushed into it, didn't have anywhere to go, couldn't go forward anymore, and that pressure ended up coming out downward and created this little fold here. And you can see that this fold goes up into there, and it kind of curled over here, which is why I covered this area with stuff. Now you can see I did not do a great job under there, and that's one of the reasons why I brought this up here, was so that I could scrape this all off and try beating this out before I go and replace the tank. But I'm pretty sure there's like this covered the leak just fine, but there's another leak that was like under this part here. So I can see one clear crack right there. And I'm hoping that that's the only one, but I'm guessing that there's another one down over here. Okay, so when I was looking at this yesterday, I'm not sure what the video showed, but this area was way up here. It was bowed out this direction. and I used a ball peen hammer. The flat side I flattened, and the rounded side I used to take down some of these lines that started appearing in here. There was like a little cliff edge and a cliff edge there that I had to beat down with the rounded side, but it worked out. If you don't know how to beat metal, wouldn't recommend it, but this worked. It took about an hour. This shape now matches the heat shield, now matches what the heat shield looks like, roughly. I had to beat the heat shield back into shape as well, though, so I'm not really sure what it looked like exactly, but I think that this is about right. And what I have here is I've got a JB Weld product, but there's other products on the market. And basically this putty here, I'm going to squish it until it pops up in there, and then I'm going to mix the two putties together. And within 5 minutes, they will be hot enough to set on fire. So I need to be quick about this. This stuff cures up super, super quick. I'm only going to need it for 1 minute. You can see the crack here. It was like that big, but it was actually this big the whole time. It just was only showing me this little tiny bit. And once I beat it into the other direction, it showed to be much, much bigger. And that's why when I covered it the first time and I only covered that little part there, this part down here was still leaking. And that caused the whole thing to get messed up. So it was good that I got this out of the car and turned it upside down and worked on it over here. But anyways, so I actually went inside the gas tank with my hand and tried hitting the crack a little bit, but it didn't seem to do a whole lot. Just to smooth it out and give me a little bit more metal to work with, because I want as small of a crack as I can possibly have here. Just squish on a layer of that I'm not going to do it on camera. It's too quick. I'm not going to sacrifice my hands because I got to move fast with this stuff, but I'm going to squish this stuff up. I'm going to cut the end of the pouch, the corner, just like read the instructions well, please. I'm going to smash it on there with this little stick. And then I'm going to put a part that I cut out, one of these, on top of half the contents of the package, and then I'm going to pour the other half on there, and I'm going to make a nice thick layer. And, you know, the patch is going to be bigger than the crack itself. So hope it works out. We'll see. Okay, so it hasn't cured up quite yet. It hasn't been 5 full minutes, but I got it all on there, and I'm happy with it. So it's extremely hot right now. It's so hot of a material that this stick was getting hot all the way through it and burning my fingers through my gloves. So it gets very hot very quickly. And what basically all that I did here was I sprayed it on there, I put my little patch on, and then I put another big glob over the top of it, and then I used my stick, the full stick length, to scoop it up to try and keep it kind of even, because I didn't want a big blob sticking out. And then I smoothed out the edges real quick and left it alone. And hopefully this works out. It looks pretty good. It looks like what I wanted it to be, and it's probably squished inside the tank a little bit, which is good, because I don't want gasoline to be able to creep its way down. Hopefully this will work out good. Okay, so we tested this, we flipped it over, put some gas in, and it looks perfect. So I'm ready to move on to the next step, which is to protect it from heat. This sits right where the exhaust pipe is, right? And so the exhaust pipe, which gets up to 500 degrees roughly, 700, 800, sometimes 1300, pretty high up there. This can only stand 240 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have an extreme heat putty. I'm going to apply that over the top to cover it, and hopefully that does the trick. All right, I got it on there. 4 to 6 hours of wait time, potentially up to 24. I put a coating on the exhaust pipe there as well, and it's got the heat shield, so hopefully that's enough protection. So it's been a couple of days, and it's very humid here. It's very warm, but it's definitely not 2,400 degrees warm. And the outside edge is cracked, and you can slip things under there and peel it up. I think that is because I did not put this part on the metal. I think that's all that's going on. I think everywhere where it's touching metal, it's going to be fine. But this is the kind of thing I'm worried about, is that it's not fully covering right there. See this? So I guess everywhere that you put it, you want like there to be a metal exterior to it or something. Oh well, I think it'll be just fine. I think it'll still protect that solution very well, and I don't think we'll have any more problems. Well, even here, this is metal. Maybe I didn't clean this up well enough, so I guess you got to really clean your surfaces. All right, I'm gonna push the gas tank up the ramp. Those are the two straps, and put this block of wood underneath it this way to support it so that I can get some of these fittings on, and then bring it up the rest of the way. All right, so it was a little difficult to get it up there. It wasn't as easy as just push it onto the things and it goes up. I used this crate and 2x4 for the support system to get this up into position. I had to get it around this little cable here and then push it up on the other side without letting this side fall back down. And then once I had it up into some position, I put the strap on this side, and that gave it support so that I could go around and put a couple of fittings on without losing too much room. I didn't put the strap on all the way, just partially. I had enough wiggle room to go ahead and do a couple little things. And then once I had those things all put together, all buttoned up, I went ahead and put the strap on here, and I got it most of the way up to get the last part that's in there, and then put on the other strap. Tightened them both up real nice, put the last few fittings on, went up into the back seat and put those fittings on so everything's all snugged up and pushed up properly. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the heat shield on. Alright, so this is the part of the exhaust that connects to the catalytic converter near the front of the car, and you can see here that this gasket is pretty worn, and it's got parts of it that are missing because they're still attached over here, and I got to chip all that stuff off, and some of it comes off pretty easily, but some of it's a little difficult to get off. So I'm going to use a screwdriver and a hammer to get some of it off, and then for the rest of it, instead of sanding by hand, I'm going to use a rotary tool with a little flapper wheel. And we got both sides done. So when I started this process, the gas tank was jutting down into the exhaust pipe there. Got some new bolts on there. The other ones got stripped out. All right, we've got the tailpipe back up, and we've got gas in the tank, and the thing's running great. Worked just fine.